Hello adventurers, my name is Atticus and welcome back to Myths and Mischief. Today we jump from the world of myth to our own world, and a subject that all of us at Myths and Mischief care deeply about: queer pride. We have more and more pride events every year. Awareness for all genders, sexualities, and identities are just exploding. Rainbow merch, parades, charity events, and with it, increased hate crimes and horrible acts that have always been the unfortunate norm for the community for the whole month of June. But, did you ever ask why June? There is an answer, and it's a story of empowerment, of violence, of joy, and of tragedy. This video will talk about how Pride began and who is considered the most important player. But before we do, hit the like button and leave an affirming comment to boost this video in the algorithm, and subscribe so you have a channel that is a safe space for you if you're different like us. Let's turn back the clock to the 1940s where our story begins. In the years following World War II, there were many awareness groups gaining traction, one of which being the homophile movements, the very first voices for gay rights. In many places, like New York, the sheer act of being homosexual and gathering socially was outlawed. This was overturned in 1966 in New York, but any displays of homosexual love were a criminal offense. This meant that bars were some of the only places that any sexual or gender minority could gather, especially bottle bars or bring-your-own-liquor bars, which did not have a liquor license and were often owned by the mafia. They were unregulated, controlled by crime bosses who cared more about profits than people, meaning that to cut costs, things as essential as fire exits were never built. These bars were raided on suspicion of selling liquor illegally, and they'd always arrest some patrons displaying homosexual behavior as well. Raiding a bottle bar became an excuse to go to gay bars and arrest the queers, just living, hurting nobody, and use brutal force. Despite the various uprisings, bars were still being raided and shut down, and more gays arrested. By 1969, the Stonewall Inn was the last gay bar in New York where you could dance. In the months leading up to June in 1969, Stonewall was raided once a month. The fuel for a fire was lit, and the fury of the oppressed was ready to explode. All they needed was something to light the fuse. It is here that we must introduce a very important player, Marsha P. Johnson. Born August 24, 1945, she moved to New York when she was only 17. She represented everything that the bigoted society hated. She was black. She was homeless. She was poor. She was a sex worker, making her a criminal. She wore colorful dresses, a flower crown, and a smile despite it all, and she was assigned male at birth. Self-identifying as a gay transvestite who used she/her pronouns, Marsha P. Johnson was a transgender woman of color before the word transgender existed, and was out and proud as soon as she was away from her oppressive home. The P stood for Pay It No Mind, her motto in life. She met another trans girl of color, Sylvia Riviera, who was only 11, who Marsha immediately became a mother figure to. Homeless on the streets of New York, Marsha and Sylvia frequented Stonewall, and just happened to be there in the early hours of June 28, 1969. It is well documented how it started. Where the mob would usually be tipped off if the police were about to raid one of their bars, Stonewall was caught unaware when police arrived with a warrant. They came in, arresting around 13 gays and lesbians, sending in a female officer to inspect the genitals of anybody they suspected as cross-dressing. It is, however, debated how the riot began. Most sources agree it began when a lesbian was beaten in the head as she entered a police car, causing her to cry out for the surrounding patrons to do something. The spark was lit, and people were angry, and it finally exploded. Patrons, gay and straight, started throwing anything they could at the police. Bottles, glasses, bricks, anything that could be thrown. The crowd steadily grew until it was hundreds. Among those hundreds were Marsha and Sylvia, who involved themselves heavily. They threw whatever they could, feeling that as trans women they had nothing to lose but their lives. Marsha was so heavily involved she's credited as throwing the first brick, though she denied this all her life, stating that she arrived when the riot had already begun. Either way, her presence left a mark. Police barricaded themselves inside the bar. Knowing it had no fire exit, the mob lit it ablaze. and so the movement for queer rights took off like a rocket. Little did anyone know this riot is what opened the box. Gay fury, trans pride, lesbian joy, bisexual fire, all of it finally bubbled over and activism properly began. Marsha led the charge in many ways. She was a true example. Despite her troubles of still being a sex worker and still being frequently arrested, her smile never faltered and her joy was felt. She began a drag group called the Hot Peaches, and even caught the eye of Andy Warhol, and was featured in many of his prints. In 1970, Marsha and Sylvia founded Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, or STAR, an organization dedicated to sheltering young transgender individuals who were shunned by their families. The two also began Star House, a place where transgender youth could stay and feel safe. On June 28, 1970, 1 year after Stonewall, the first gay pride event happened. A celebration, not a riot. An occasion of joy, not of pain and anger. And Marsha was one of the loudest voices. She led protests, activism, spoke out however she could all throughout the 70s. Awareness grew and allies were gained, and the LGBTQ+ community found its rainbow flag in 1978. Red for life, orange for healing, yellow for sunlight, green for nature, blue for harmony, and violet for spirit. Throughout the AIDS crisis, Marsha and Sylvia spoke out in support. In 1990, Marsha was diagnosed with HIV herself, and so became one of the faces of HIV and why you shouldn't be afraid of it. Slowly but surely, it started to work. Police brutality lessened, hate crimes were punished, laws against queer love and expression were overturned, and new laws were written to welcome love in whatever form it took, a process that is, of course, still ongoing. In 1992, Marsha was found dead in the Hudson River. Police ruled it a suicide immediately. Marsha's friends immediately challenged the ruling, stating there must have been foul play. Infuriatingly, the police only changed the cause of death from drowning to undetermined and investigated no further. In 2012, the investigation was opened back up, but no results so far. The Stonewall Inn became a national monument, and in 2021, a bronze bust of Marsha was erected in West Village not far from Stonewall. It remains there to this day. Obviously, we have a long way to go to see the world that Marsha wanted to live in. But we are a far cry from the world that fostered an environment where the riot was necessary for any sort of change. But whenever you see somebody erasing trans people from their activism, or targeting trans women, removing the T from the acronym, remember Stonewall. Remember Marsha and what she lived and died for. No LGB without the T is a message that we need now more than ever, as the legislation of the United States attempts to outlaw being transgender again. We have the knowledge of what happened before. We have the names of trans people who dedicated their lives to freedom of love and freedom of expression for the LGBTQ+ community. We must not forget. As you celebrate Pride this year, take a few moments to remember Stonewall, the homophile movements, Sylvia Riviera, and Marsha Pay It No Mind Johnson, who lived and died so that we could have a better tomorrow. Do not stand for transphobia, homophobia, or any form of bigotry. Please like this video, share, and comment so that it is boosted in the algorithm and seen by as many as possible as the people in charge attempt to rewrite history. Any comment expressing bigoted sentiments will be removed. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. And remember that without trans women of color, Pride wouldn't be a parade. Until our next adventure, I'm Atticus, signing off.